Blasphemy code. Australian state implements religious vilification law. The newly passed quote unquote religious vilification law in New South Wales, or NSW, I can't talk, NSW for short. Australia has amended the NSW Anti-Discrimination Act of 1977, making it unlawful to publicly incite hatred, serious contempt, or severe ridicule towards individuals or group because of their religious beliefs, affiliations, or activities. This extends to all forms of public communication, verbal and nonverbal. Backed by both the ruling Australian Labor Party and the opposition Liberal Party, the law defines public act broadly, creating potential concerns around freedom of speech. Critics argue that the legislation's vagueness might allow it to be weaponized to protect practices like gay conversion therapy, which some religious groups endorse. Josh Pallas, the president of the NSW Council for Civil Liberties, has expressed concerns about the imbalance in protection, as religious organizations are exempt from other parts of the law that prevent them from discriminating against other communities. Alastair Lawrie of the Public Interest Advocacy Center warned that the bill's current form is broader than other states' anti-discrimination laws, potentially enabling restrictions of freedom of speech. However, the New South Wales government defends the legislation, stating that it mirrors existing provisions that make vilification unlawful based on race, homosexuality, transgender status, and HIV/AIDS status. Additionally, they note that the law respects positions of no religious belief or affiliation, emphasizing that it was enacted after consultations with various stakeholders, including legal advocates, community groups, and faith-based groups. So let us dig into this. So this was covered because, or actually, someone emailed this to me directly. So unfortunately, I can't remember this person's name off the top of my head, but thank you to the members of our Atheist Republic community that bring things to my attention. If you guys have a story that you want us to cover, you can contact us or on our Discord, link in the description. We have a whole channel on our Discord server dedicated to you recommending stories that we should cover, which I love because I wouldn't have heard about this otherwise. So thank you to our AR members that bring stuff like this to my attention. And the way that a lot of Australian media is covering it is in the perspective of there is a huge push in Australia right now to criminalize, or maybe not criminalize, but to at least make illegal gay conversion therapy practices, quote unquote therapy. Let me be clear, there's nothing actually therapeutic about it. Basically saying that this is a huge issue for people who oppose this kind of practice, because they may need to basically walk on eggshells when they are trying to talk about the harm behind a practice like gay conversion therapy, and also the motivations and rhetoric, the ideology behind these harmful pseudotherapies, right? Because it's this idea that you have to, okay, here's a quote of a professor talking about this. They'd have to be very careful about what they said so that they didn't incite hatred against that religious view, but they're certainly free to attack the practice. So this is one example of a consequence of a religious vilification law like this. Feel free to ask me if I should provide more context or anything, but Armin, based on what I've told you so far, what is your reaction? What do you think?
Give me an example of vilify people. What does it mean to vilify people?
So according to the law, let me find the exact rule. To publicly incite hatred, serious contempt, or severe ridicule towards individuals or groups because of their religious beliefs, affiliations, or activities.
Okay, so if I say I hate all X people, and X is a membership in a religion, that would be illegal?
Well, then it becomes a question of what this is why the broadness of this law in this state is an issue. The broadness of and the vagueness in which it is written is exactly that issue, because at what point do we reach incitement? The question around what is incitement is already legally an extremely difficult question to answer.
Okay.
But now, so that's a good question. Is just saying that statement itself incitement? Do you need more to be considered incitement? It's to vilify members of a group, right?
Like, can you give me an example of something that is clearly vilification for X people, for example? Just an
Ex-Muslims cause corruption on earth.
Okay,
that seems like a pretty obvious example of vilifying an entire group.
Okay, but this is about people of their religion, not lack of religion, right?
Yeah.
Are atheists covered, or like with this law as well? Like if somebody vilifies against atheists, are atheists covered?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, atheists are covered. Okay, so vilifying people, that being illegal. What if I put it in a book? Would the book be illegal?
That's a good question.
I don't know because this law will make the Quran and Bible illegal, I think.
All forms of public communication, verbal and nonverbal.
Okay. This law, if it's going to be enforced without double standards, like if without like honestly, would ban the Quran. This law should ban. If this has this been passed?
I believe it has been passed. I think there has been some suggestions to amend, but my understanding is that it has been passed. I don't think it has.
Do you understand that this law will make the Bible and the Quran illegal? Do you understand how that works? Right. You people in the live chat, do you understand what I'm saying? The Quran, the recitation of the Quran, certain verses in the Quran will be illegal based on, and the Hadith will be illegal based on this law. Does somebody in Australia, do you guys want to go challenge the legality of scripture and Hinduism? Oh, Hinduism for sure. Oh my God. Yeah, do you guys want to go challenge the Quran, like ban the Quran and the Bible? Because you have been given a law that could ban the entirety of the Quran and, well, at least certain parts of the Quran and the Bible and many Hindu scripture, like the Manusmriti. I don't know. By the way, this is insane.
It's so hypocritical. We see this all the time with these like anti-hate speech laws, but then these texts that are privileged above other texts merely on the basis of them meeting the very diffuse standard of being religious and therefore put on a pedestal above criticism. They get privileged above other ideas.
Yeah, but this is now in the law.
And shielded above other ideas.
I mean, okay, but this is now in the law. You could have lawyers, atheist lawyers, somebody like atheist organizations, please hire a lawyer to go to show how stupid. By the way, I'm not in favor of banning the Quran or the Bible. Or any other religious scripture. I'm a free speech guy, okay? If I say maybe it would be a good idea to go hire a lawyer to use this law to ban the Quran, is not because I want to ban the Quran. I want to make a point about how stupid this law is. This is an anti-free speech law. I am very much against vilifying an entire group of people, okay? But I'm not for that being in law. Any law that says like me saying my opinion, even if it's a crappy opinion, will be illegal. That's a crappy law. I can't swear on YouTube. That is, we should not have laws like this. Obviously, what are you doing, Australia? Anyways, I can go on a rant, but I know.
No, I mean, I agree. I also actively oppose hate speech laws, which people think is weird or they don't understand. but really, I don't like the idea of a governmental authority making these prescriptions. For me, it's more of a state power kind of thing. But Australia in general has a lot of very, well, from my perspective as an American, let's be fair, very bizarre, hate speech, quote unquote, proclamations. So I'm not surprised by this at all, to be honest. I don't even think they have free speech actually enshrined in any form of constitution.
Oh yeah, they don't. There's no form of hate speech laws that you could have that will not target the holy scriptures. Go ahead and make an argument to me. Like Muslims and Christians, like I want to ask a Muslim who supports hate speech laws, how do you think the Quran is going to survive that? Tell me. Even if you come up like, well, that's the wrong interpretation, then you could then you could see, anybody could say that about, like, if the way Quran, for example, talks about Christians and Jews, and especially non-believers, if you use the same lines and replace kafirun, just go in the Quran, take the Quran and replace kafirun with Muslims. Any hate speech law would see that as something ban-worthy. And Muslims who are against hate speech would categorize that as hate speech.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. It would be hate speech. But the thing is that Muslims, for example, would recognize that as hate speech. Like even the Muslims who say that the Quran is not hateful, if you read the Quran and replace the way that the Quran talks about kafirun, unbelievers, and say that the same exact words about Muslims are like, yeah, that's hate speech. Obviously so. And also the Bible, just the book of Revelation. Just take the book of Revelation and replace unbelievers with Christians. That would be considered a hate speech. Even by most Christians, they would recognize that as hate speech. Anyways.
One thing that I thought that I wanted to touch on briefly, really interesting in the article I read by The Guardian explaining this law and the opposition against it, is there was an activist in Australia who is basically fighting caste discrimination in India. And this person was explicitly citing that they fear that people who are fighting caste discrimination within their communities in Australia. Oops. Can you hear that ambulance?
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Basically, they're saying Kassim said people deemed from lower castes who speak out against caste discrimination are often harassed by others deemed part of the higher caste groups. He was concerned that the new laws would give license to religious groups to accuse those who speak up about caste discrimination of religious vilification. So he's saying, right, okay, when I'm in a religious community and I'm trying to talk about the bad behavior within my own religious community or broader diaspora community that I come from, am I going to be accused of vilification because I'm trying to address bad, harmful behavior? This is a serious concern that I would have if I was also one of these activists. If I was fighting gay conversion therapy, how can I be honest about fighting the practice without being able to accurately address the beliefs that fuel the practice? You're only allowed to address the practice. You're not allowed to address the belief. These practices don't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
So a lot of people, the person that emailed this to me, thank you once again, they basically were like, does this constitute a blasphemy law in some forms?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
It's a really difficult line to draw.
It is. Shekha is asking me, what about like the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, and because I mentioned Hindu scripture also promotes hate against certain group of people. To be fair to the Bhagavad Gita does not promote violence to any certain group of people, because the Bhagavad Gita promotes hate against everybody, against violence against everybody, the entire humanity. Okay, so it's the hate in Bhagavad Gita is so widespread across all living things. That level of hatred does not discriminate. Okay, it literally promotes genocide against anybody. So that's how hateful the Gita is. That is not discriminatory. It's all inclusive is in its promotion of violence. So
Universalizing.
universal hatred and violence. Yes, exactly. It's the only religious book that I know of that is this universal when it comes to promoting violence. It's So to be fair to the Gita, if you want to find, yeah. If in Hinduism, if you want a book that is like hateful towards certain sects specifically, I suggest you read the Manusmriti. Yeah, that would be a better book for that. If the different kinds of book for different kinds of hate.